boy.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of FitPet Boston Talks. My name is Leah Lodato, and I am the host of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I'm going to do a book review, another book review. Lucky you. So I'm going to talk about the book, The Art of Raising a Puppy by the Monks of New Skete, and just kind of give a summary of the book and give some of my takeaways after reading the book. So for the remainder of November and December, I'm going to be releasing a podcast every Friday, different topics, talking about nutrition, doing reviews of some trialing that Laurie and I have done. We're going to talk about our goals for 2023, whether or not we executed it or not, some goals for 2024. And we really appreciate that you have decided to come along on the ride with us. I love doing this project. It's something that I am committed to doing. Historically, this has been a place where local Boston area dog handling professionals can come and share about their lives, dogs, and careers. That's something that I've taken a step away from this past year, and Laurie and I have been doing deep dives on specific topics. And most of those topics are things that our clients bring up to us, so we can answer them in a long form and have a reference to steer them towards if the questions get answered again. So we're dog trainers and handlers. I am a dog walker. I spend most of my time in the woods with dogs. I love being out in nature. I love hanging out with dogs off leash. In no means am I an expert or an author or a paid person, journalist who reviews books. But if I do come across something that I find interesting, that I could find beneficial for you if you're listening or if you're a client, I love to share it. So the last time I did a book review was a book called Coyote America, which I found super interesting. Apologies if you found yourself in a conversation with me about coyotes in the recent past. It's something that I just find super interesting, and that was a fun project. So on the list of books that I had for 2023, I had picked up a copy of The Art of Raising a Puppy from Barnes & Noble and made my way through the book, and I thought that I would share some of my thoughts. If you've read the book, cool. If you haven't, cooler. If you're interested, read it. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick summary of the book and talk about my major takeaways. I'm not going to be reading directly from the text. So if you want to read the book, go out and read it. The one thing that I will read is on the back cover, the monks give a little biography of who they are and what they do, so I'll go ahead and read that to give you some context. The Monks of New Skete have lived as a community in Cambridge, New York for more than 3 decades. They support themselves by breeding, raising, and training dogs at their monastery. Their widely praised books include How to Be Your Dog's Best Friend, The Art of Raising a Puppy, and Divine Canine. They've together sold more than 1.2 million copies. The Monks of New Skete are also authors of In the Spirit of Happiness, Spiritual Wisdom for Living. And you can learn more by visiting NEWSKETE, newskete.com. So I checked out their website, and it looks like their breeding program has either been put on hold, or they might just have enough people to place their puppies without having to solicit randos on the internet. So if you know anything about breeding, most of the time good breeders will have a list, or sometimes they don't even have to do much marketing or advertising to place their puppies. I have no idea what their breeding program is like right now, but that's what they have done historically. So if you pick up the book, it's a really attractive book, nice green cover with a beautiful German Shepherd puppy on the front cover. And the first couple of chapters, okay, well, hang on, let me back up. I just wanted to give a few disclaimers before getting into the text. Do I necessarily agree with absolutely every word that is published in this book as far as how to train a puppy? No, I'm never going to read a book and be like, oh yeah, this book was 100% on point about every topic that I know about. If I wanted to read a book like that, I would write a book like that, right? So the idea is I'm not putting myself in complete alignment with every single thing that is in this book by saying, I really like this book. So I can say, I think this book is a book that dog trainers should have on their shelf. I think it's a book that new puppy owners should read before they acquire a puppy. I think that it is artfully written. It's well written. It has a personal element and flavor to it that I think other dog training books are missing. It's super practical. It is a balanced approach to dog training, which I really appreciate. So it's not purely positive and it's not a compulsion-based mentality when they're talking about their training. That being said, I don't have to agree with every training technique that they outline in the book in order to say it's a good book, right? So I just wanted to give that disclaimer, and I'll get into some of the points that I might clash with a little bit later on in the review. I really like that this book also gives a lot of history. It gives background information and scientific information about the domesticated dogs. So there are a lot of references in the back of this book. It doesn't go too far into the sciencey areas of, talking about the domesticated dog, but it gives you just enough to be informed, which I thought was awesome. And I also wanted to say, for any new puppy owner, or if you are looking to get a puppy, your reference for raising that puppy, if you've never had a puppy before, should extend beyond just getting a book and reading it. Okay, you want to set yourself up with a trainer that you trust, that has a, good, comes highly recommended from either friends or acquaintances, somebody that's local in your area so that you can make appointments with them and it's not a huge pain in the neck to get to them, to classes, etc. I would pick somebody that, trains and trials their own dogs, doing something with their own dogs so they have a trained dog to show you an example of. I think that that's a really important part of finding a good trainer, is finding somebody that has trained their own dogs, and work with them. If what they say is in disagreement with something that you read, that's okay. You can, use your common sense, use your critical thinking skills, figure out what pieces you like and what pieces are going to work, and then leave the rest. All right, so let's get into a little summary of the book. Again, it's a well-researched book with a lot of references backed by the experience of the monks, who have a lot of experience working with these dogs. Obviously, monks live a pretty quiet lifestyle, and the dogs are integrated in their lifestyle. So that was a really cool perspective given in this book that I think it's pretty dang unique compared to other dog training books. First, the book starts by describing a pregnant German Shepherd, Anka, whelping a litter. And you could pretty much do a full stop at chapter 6 and learn a ton if you don't know anything about how puppies are birthed and whelped at a breeder. It was so interesting. They go through all the different stages that the puppy is going through from birth to 8 weeks and the stages of development. So when they start walking, when they open their eyes, when they can start hearing, when they start teething off and getting off of their mother's milk. It talks about the different stages that the mother goes through, from being, really protective and with the pups all the time to leaving the whelping box because the pups are getting a little bit annoying. It talks about the personalities of the pups and how to evaluate their temperaments even before they hit that 8 weeks of age and, are presumably start being placed with their permanent owner. Really, really interesting part of the book. Loved it. One specific thing that they talked about was the importance of keeping the whelping box and the puppy's play areas clean. And this was something that I hadn't thought about, but they argue that a puppy can develop coprophagia, which is the disgusting habit of eating poop, if they are not kept clean in their whelping box at the breeder, which I thought was a really interesting point and something that I hadn't thought of before. Whether or not that's 100% true, not sure, but it was an interesting argument to hear. The book then goes on to talk about placing pups by their personality. It gives advice about choosing a breed of a dog. It talks about the different stages of puppyhood and different fear periods that the dog will go through. It gives advice on nighttime training and bathroom management. talks about crate training, leash handling. It starts to talk about obedience training and outlines the 5 major commands and how to begin teaching them. The 5 major commands would be come, heel, down, sit, and stay. The book explains the importance of play and socialization, talks about disciplining pups. This is definitely a balanced approach to dog training. There's a small description of the monk's philosophy regarding e-collar training. Obviously, we're not e-collar training puppies in the book, but I thought that it was great that the book took time apart from conventional puppy training to just talk about, how they utilize that tool, which I thought was great. And then gives some testimonials towards the end of the book, different pups that they placed and how those pups were doing, and how the owners were interacting with the pups, which I thought was cool. And there are also a couple of chapters on general care and husbandry. So grooming, taking care of any medical issues that your pup might have, nail clipping, vet visits, etc. So for me, what was the major takeaway? Like, what made this book different than just a manual on how to train a dog? And I think the key falls in that word that's in the title, and the word is art. So this idea gets thrown around a lot in dog training circles, that dog training is an art or is an art form. And if we look at what the definition is of an art form, it's any activity regarded as a medium of imaginative or creative self-expression. So when we talk about art in relation to the way we train our dog, it's a really interesting dynamic, right? Because whose self-expression is it? Is it the dog's self-expression? Is it your self-expression? Or is it a combination of both? And obviously, it's going to be a combination of both. Your dog's self-expression, the way that they express themselves at the highest level, coupled with your expression as an owner and the expectations that you have for the relationship and how you can shape and mold those expectations to be exactly what you're looking for a companion animal. That's kind of how the art form swirls around itself, right? Dog training, you can't learn it from a manual. You can't learn it from a book. I would argue you can't even learn it from one specific person. Of course, it's helpful to have a mentor and somebody that you can learn from, someone that will guide and teach you. Then you have to go out and do things on your own. You have to learn what you have the propensity for. You have to learn what you like as a handler. You have to learn what you're looking for in a companion and in a specific dog's personality or their breed, and go from there. And this goes whether you are a normal person just training your own dog or whether you're a trainer. So that word art, the idea that dog training is an art form, to me, that's what distinguishes this book from others, because we have this environment at a monastery and we have monks that are training and raising these pups and also doing classes with people, and they have a specific way of living with the dogs, and also they have interesting ways of expressing themselves, right? They live this quiet lifestyle, and one of the chapters is devoted to one of the monk's journal entries about his puppy. And it was just so interesting to read those journal entries and about how he was observing the different developmental stages, different problems that he was dealing with the puppy, different ways he was getting to the other side of those problems, and character traits that were showing themselves as the puppy was getting older. And it really made you focus on the relationship between the monk and his puppy over the training techniques that they were using to get from A to B. So the training techniques we use to get from A to B are important, but the most important thing is that leadership dynamic between you and your dog. And to me, this book really outlines that. And it further outlines it by going into some of the client testimonials at the end of the book. And I thought that it was very interesting that they used the word art in the title of the book, because the longest client testimonial was a dog named Runge, who was owned by Maurice Sendak, who is an artist. He is the guy that illustrated Where the Wild Things Are. So they visited him at his house and did a little interview. Today, they probably would have done a podcast with him and talked about his relationship with his dog, Runge. So I thought that was really interesting. So again, the major takeaway from this book is not the nuts and bolts. It's the focus on the relationship. And it's also this flavor of the book is just so artfully and sincerely written from the point of view of people that you can tell really love and care about these animals and want the best for them and understand deeply the hierarchy and the dynamic of the dog and owner relationship. So I wanted to highlight some of the points of disagreement just in case you're a client and you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, well, I read this book and Leah and Laurie said X and this book is telling me Y. And I'm just going to mention these things. I'm not going to highlight them and just kind of give my 2 cents, but not extensively. So first of all, the book talks about the concept of rolling a puppy as a dominance display. And that's a very controversial idea in dog training. We have people that do it and then people that absolutely hate it. And trust me, the people that do it don't give one crap about the people that don't do it, right? But the people that don't do it are very quick to dissuade or discourage that practice. And my argument would be, and I don't do that, neither does Laurie, roll puppies. When the book is describing puppy rolling as a temperament test for a very, very small puppy, I think there's a good argument to be made for the usefulness of that. And if you're interested, you got to read the book. I'm not going to tell you what the book said about it. I also think that when you read the latter chapters of the book where they talk about massaging and rolling a juvenile puppy, there's a strong argument to be made that there is a useful application for doing that as well. Again, not something that I do, but something that the book outlines. Another thing is when the book talks about nighttime training for a very small puppy, they advise tethering the dog with a metal chain next to your bed. And the metal chain is not so that it's more restrictive, it's so that the dog doesn't chew through the leash. And the idea being when the puppy is that age, they really want to be part of the pack and not separated from the pack in a crate. And the idea that they can be next to your bed on their own bed, tethered with a metal chain that they can't chew through so that they are safe, is the best way in the first couple of weeks to rear your puppy. That's not something that Laurie and I do. We start crate training from the giddy up. That crate is close to our bedroom in the beginning because I want to be able to hear when the puppy starts to whine and needs to go out. And if they're too far away from me, I can't hear that. So inadvertently, the puppy is quite close to our sleeping space when they're really little. One of the other things that the book says is don't play tug with your puppy because it encourages mouthiness and chewiness. The book goes into great detail about retrieval games and encouraging people to play retrieval games with their pup. We play tug with our puppies if the puppies like to play tug. It's a great form of self-expression for the dogs, we believe, and it also is an important piece of, teaching the dog any type of bite work or mouth work if you're doing that later on in the dog's life, if you have a working dog, or if you want to just have a great way to connect with your dog and use as a reward for obedience training or as an outlet for exercise. Again, this book is about puppy rearing, and it was quite clear that the monks are very attuned to the sport of Schutzen, and they know the sport. I don't know if they do it with their dogs, but it's very clear that they place some of their dogs to working dog homes. So I can guarantee that they probably would say, sure, play tug with your dogs when they're adult dogs, because it's bite work is a big part of those working dog sports. But that was a little bit of a difference between the way that we play with puppies and the way that the monks were suggesting. Another thing that can really turn people hot or cold is this idea of an alpha relationship with the dog. So many times we will discourage the use of that word because there's a very bro-y, douchey mentality when we think about an alpha relationship. Because if we think about an alpha relationship, then there's a beta. And if we think about that in a sexual relationship, well, you guys get the point, right? Like, we're not doing the whole slave master thing when it comes to our relationships, unless you choose to do something like that, in which case, more power to you. Just, it's not me, but whatever, do you, boo. So anyway, we don't use these terms as frequently as dog trainers, and most of the time I believe it's so that we don't dissuade people. However, we have to understand that there is a dominance hierarchy in our homes with our dogs. And I feel as though in some cases we've swayed too far to the other direction, where people are looking at their dogs as their fur babies or their, little purse dogs, or, they're taking dogs into their homes that have really big personalities and really need strong leadership, and dressing them up in Halloween costumes and kissing them. And then the dog reacts and responds in a way that nobody was expecting, and everybody gets upset. And, how could my lovely fur baby do such a thing? And we have to go back to recognizing a dominance hierarchy. If you want to use the word alpha to describe that relationship, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. It's just not a word that we choose to use. We choose to use like a coach-player relationship, or like a mentor-mentee relationship, or like a teacher-student relationship. But I still think that there is value in just using that word if that's how you're going to get through to somebody that they need to be in control of the relationship with their dog, which is, you have to. They're dogs, right? Unless we just want to let our dogs roam free and do whatever the heck they want all the time. And some scenarios that might work. If you live on an area with big open land and you just have a dog and you don't want to have anything to do with their life, that's fine. Just let them outside and let them do whatever they want, and more power to you. But I would say, 95% of dogs live inside the home or come in the home at some point, and we need to be providing guidance and direction. So overall, I think this is a great book to use as a guide for new puppy owners. I think it's a great book for dog trainers to have on their shelf as a reference. Again, that focus on the art of raising a dog versus a manual for raising a dog would be the major takeaway for me from reading this book. But otherwise, if you're interested, get out there, read it. If you want to buy it, you can. I bought mine at Barnes & Noble. If you want to check out your local library, man, that is a wonderful resource in most towns. So if you haven't been to your local library since God knows when, pay a visit over there, especially if you have kids. They offer really great activities. Actually, Laurie and Buddha go to the library. They were just there yesterday doing a therapy dog visit. And they have kids that sign up weeks in advance to hang out with Buddha and read to him. And the library offers a bunch of different activities and entertainment for the kids, and it's free. So that's even better. So anyway, there's my plug for local libraries. Thank you so much for listening to the book review on the art of raising a puppy, and we will see you next time.